My guests today are writer-director Alex Ajouni and producer Adrian Clark and their short film Bukra. Now, Alex Ajouni is a Syrian director and screenwriter based in LA, now based in New York City, going to NYU, and growing up in Syria during the war, Alex turned to storytelling as a means of processing and articulating experiences that later shaped her cinematic vision. She recently graduated magna cum laude with a Bachelor of Arts in Film and Television from UCLA, where she was a Regent Scholar and received notable accolades, including the UFVA Carol Fielding Grant and the Antonio Blanco Award. Now, alongside her creative pursuits as a director, Alex works as a freelance photographer, collaborating with notable clients such as the AFI, UCLA Athletics, and the Ballet Company at UCLA. Now, with a perspective shaped by her heritage and personal journey, Alex is dedicated to leveraging the visual medium to unearth once buried stories and give voice to those often left unheard. Now, we also have Adrian Clark, and he is a Latinx producer who recently graduated as the valedictorian from UCLA's School of Theater, Film, and Television. Now, starting his college career as a theater director, Adrian fell in love with creating, developing, and inspiring new works for the stage and screen, and he found a passion in producing, making it his mission to give people from all walks of life the same opportunity he wished he had. Now, in the past year, he produced 2 UCLA thesis films and served as the line producer on an AFI thesis project, and he is the producer of the new short film, Bukra. So, ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome film director Alex Ajouni and producer Adrian Clark and their wonderful short film, Bukra, to the show. Welcome to both of you.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you,
you for
Ward.
having us.
You're very welcome. Well, Alex, let's start with you. I love this film so much. Where did you get the idea for such an incredible story?
So it comes from a lot of I mean I grew up in Syria during the war and back in Syria I experienced a lot of feelings of loss of hope being in such an environment, being in such a situation really makes it feel like you're not like living for like to create a better future in a sense, and this is kind of where the title comes from. You're kind of living every day to survive, and it's not a way of living. So this is something I always say of like, I lived under bombardment, gunfire, things that like no human can comprehend, and weirdly enough, these are the things that you actually accumulate. Sorry, that you get used to. But what one thing like your like mind completely rejects is that loss of hope. And so I've been fortunate enough not to have to become a refugee. I was able to, leave Syria safely on an airplane, but a lot of people did not have that opportunity. Some of those people are my friends and loved ones, who have had to become refugees in other countries, and I know their journeys, and it's that same like repeating like cycle of not being able to move forward in life because there is not an opportunity to do so. So the title of the film is Bukra, which in Arabic means tomorrow. And in Arabic, the word Bukra is frequently used to mean tomorrow, but also the future.
Well, Adrian, how did you come to produce this film?
Yeah, so this is a funny story. Alex and I met on a 48-hour film, and it was probably, and she hates that I brought it up, but it was probably one of, if not the hardest films we've ever done, because it was 48 hours, obviously, that we came up with the script. It was for a competition. We came up with the script. We casted the actors. We filmed it. We edited it, and we submitted it within 48 hours. And while that film wasn't as magnificent as Bukra, what was that Alex saw that I was willing to work as hard as humanly possible to be able to get a project through. And it wasn't until probably about 6 to 8 months later when Alex was figuring out, the starts of what her thesis film was going to look like. She needed somebody who was there to support her in the sense of, creatively just being somebody to throw ideas off of, and then more specifically just getting a team together, as well as raising funds. So she asked me, um, late at night after an event. We were having a fun time, and she asked me to be the producer of her thesis. And at that time, there was no script. There's no idea. There were a few ideas roaming around, but it was definitely the fact that she just knew I was going to work tirelessly to get it done.
Well, how did you bring, or I should say, how did you build the crew?
Yeah, fantastic. Well, that is definitely a very hard and easy thing to do at the exact same time when as a student, because as a student you have the wonderful ability to have fellow students be your support system, allowing students who you know and trust or interview as if it were a fully fledged union project, be able to come on board. So we started with the most important roles, that being, cinematographer, production designer, and we kind of worked our way back to then, once the heads of the departments were filled, filling it with as many bodies as we could, who were talented and hardworking, just like us. And I speak for Alex and I in saying this, but we were very fortunate to have a very, very talented crew uh, beside us the entire time, just supporting everything that we were doing.
This is a very high quality film, and I see a lot of film. And this one really ranks really high because the production value of this film is absolutely fantastic. Now, for you, Alex, once you got the script written, I loved how the soccer ball was the center of the storyline with multiple storylines built around it. Why a soccer ball?
I think it has like soccer in general has always been like something that is accessible to everyone, regardless of like your background, regardless of if you have money, if you don't have money. It's always been accessible to everyone. So soccer is something that is really, really loved in Syria in general. And it's something that I feel like, and I speak at least for myself, is something that I feel like every kid has played when they were a child. It definitely was my experience. And we used to, not for any, like sometimes we used, if we didn't have a ball, we would make like makeshift balls, either from like plastic bags or like cloth and whatnot. And actually the idea of like winning a soccer ball from a soda is something that happened to me when I was like a child. We were like vehemently going for it. Like we were like buying. I was like, we really want to win it just because it had like the World Cup thing on it. Like it was a special like type of ball, and I finally won it, and we went to claim it, and it's like the best thing that ever happened to me. So I feel like that's also like one of the things about like why I wanted to center children in this film, is something that feels so, benign to adults, something that feels like not that big of a deal, is like a child's like entire world. And so I feel like for Amal in the story, that kind of became her whole world, and like this thread that gets her out of this like idea of like being a refugee or being in a refugee camp where you don't get access to a lot of resources, but that thing becomes a thread and your entire world for a moment.
You know, I noticed something with them all. And when she gets the bottle cap, She realizes that she has won a soccer ball and she's making it her mission to go claim it. And when she walked into that convenience store, it was the look on her face. It's like she entered another world that did not resemble anything like the refugee camp. I mean, she had this look of awe in her eyes. Just, when we walk into a convenience store, we don't think twice about it. But for her, it was a whole different world. It's almost like she walked into a candy store and was checking it all out. So I love the amazement in her eyes when she walked in that store, because I noticed it the very moment that scene started. But there were 3 to 4 elements in this film relating to relationships. And that's what I really loved about this film, because one, Amal wanted to have one last soccer match with her friend Fouad before he and his family leave the camp. Two, the ball was the element to bring Amal and her father closer together. Then Amal met a homeless refugee, which we'll get to in a moment. And then it was also her desire for the new soccer ball, but it also took time away from being with her friend Foad, who she may never see again. Why were all of these relationship elements important to telling of the story?
I think there is an element of the story that relates to generational trauma, in the sense of Amal is so desperate to have a relationship with her father, and her father, like of like no fault of his own, has to work because he's driven by that dream of getting out of the camp. So him working like 12, 14 hours a day is just trying as much as possible to get her out of this situation. And one thing about like refugee camps is a lot of times they don't have access to school. Not that this wasn't like directly explored in the film, but it's one of the ideas of like he is desperately trying to get her out of the camp for so many reasons. And that comes at the cost of his relationship with his daughter. And again, not at the fault of his own, but that still affects a child greatly. And we see it in the way that she reflects that behavior back to her friend. At no fault of her own, she's like chasing that dream so badly that she has this like tunnel vision of, we've always dreamt to play with like a real soccer ball, so I'm gonna make that dream happen because I don't know when I'm ever gonna see you again if I do. So we need to make that dream happen. And in the process, she lost the time that she could have spent with her friend. And that is a central like storyline for the story, is that parallel relationship between her and her father, and then how she kind of repeats that again generational trauma with her friend in a sense.
Yeah, I really like the fact that you kept it as father daughter, because it also resembles her friendship with Foad. It resembled her meeting the homeless refugee at the convenience store. So I loved how all of these elements aligned with one another, because the structure of this film was fantastic. The pacing was spot on. And I've watched this film more than once. And so, I saw 3 things that Amal missed. You know, like you had just said, her desire, her tunnel vision, you said it perfectly. Her tunnel vision for the soccer ball caused her to lose that precious playtime with Foad, which she will never get back. And but it also caused her, and it was weird because I noticed this right off. It caused her to lose the possible enjoyment with her father when he took off of work to surprise her to go take her to get the soccer ball. But I liked his comment in the film when she got the ball. She's standing at the entrance of the tent, and he looks at her like, "You're just like me." So I
That
love the
is
compliment that he gave her. He didn't correct her from going into the city by herself. He looked at her like she has the same focus. she's going to have the same work ethic when she gets older. And he was really proud of her, wasn't he?
The funny thing about this line is like it's one of my favorite lines in the film, and it wasn't even in the script. We had camera issues on the fourth day, on the what day was it? It was the fourth day, yes, or third day actually.
Yeah.
We had camera issues, and it was the day we shot the interior tent, and we actually shot the interior of the tent in a soundstage, so it wasn't out there where we shot the refugee camp. Crazy, I mean, amazing crew. I can gush over my crew forever, but we shot it in a soundstage, and we had camera issues in the morning, so we decided to spend that time to talk through the scenes. And then Laith Knockley, who plays the role of the father, he was like, "Wait, what if I say this?" And I was like, "Oh my God, this ties the entire idea together. Like, please do, please say that." And I think that's like these moments are like the things that kind of remind you how amazingly like collaborative this medium is one line from like an actor kind of like tied the entire film together, and in my opinion, like, and that is genuinely one of my favorite lines in the film, so I'm really glad you brought it up. I always like talk about this line of the film because it ties everything together, and it wasn't even in the script, it was Laith Knockley's idea.
Wow. That is so cool because it was such a great scene. But then you also have the scenes with Amal and the homeless Syrian man. And I was watching those scenes, and it caused her to be selfish
Mm-hmm.
with the homeless Syrian man and not actually see his plight. She did put money in the cup at the very beginning, so she noticed it then. But like you said before, her tunnel vision was so strong, she only cared about getting the soccer ball. And I thought the scene where they're standing at the counter and then he says, the clerk asks him, for ID, and he's like, I don't have ID. And Amal gets a little bit ticked off, like, what? You don't have any ID? I paused the film right there and I was looking at it and I'm like, okay, so many people, they could be homeless, they could be refugees, and people don't notice them. And and then not have the ID. It's almost like he's missing an element of himself to be part of society. And in a way, Amal didn't notice him either. And I love the way that you wrote that into the script.
Yeah, there's another parallel here with her kind of yelling at the homeless man, kind of the same way her father yelled at her, but it comes from this desperation, her desperation to reach her goal. This is the same reason her father yelled at her. He's not yelling at her. She's not the one that's not paying him every 6 months. It's his employers who are exploiting him. But it comes, unfortunately, like this is something that we sometimes do with our loved ones is because we feel so safe with them. We get to show sometimes our ugliest parts of us to them, and in a way, I this is like one of the storylines. It's a short film, so I couldn't like explore it fully, but because Bukra is meant to be, it's being developed into a feature, hopefully. But the storyline with the homeless man is meant to show a relationship that is purely not transactional. So I did put some bits and pieces, but it's a storyline that I'm really excited to explore if I end up, being able to make the feature. Is I want to show that relationship that is so pure. She's missing a father, and she finds that figure in this homeless man who, in the future has lost his daughter. So he feels also that fatherly emotion towards her. And this was the line about the gum of like, you left money, but you didn't take gum. Is this is not meant to be transactional. You did this because you knew I needed help, and I did this because I knew you needed help.
Yeah, that was perfect because I would watch that scene a few times when they're both sitting outside And I just felt, of course, we all felt sorry for him because he wasn't in a refugee camp; he was on the street.
Mm-hmm.
His focus was to try to find a better life too. He's in another element, but he hasn't found it yet. And of
Mm-hmm.
course, it's going to take an ID to get there. So I love the way the whole thing was written there. Now, for you, Adrian, with this film, were there things that within the storyline that you learned from?
Yeah, I mean, the entire thing was a learning experience on my part. But I think the most fulfilling thing that I was able to do was just talk with Alex about the story when it was being developed. And me myself, I'm a Latino who is for this production a first time producer. But I come from a decently long upbringing of theater, and I came from directing theater, being an actor, and I found it most fulfilling being able to just go back and forth with all of these thoughts that were going on in Alex's head regarding the story, and just being somebody who could bring uh, either a dose of reality to it, because Alex probably went through many drafts. I forget what the actual amount was, but by the time we finally got to our final draft, we felt that it was in a good place, and it it was all, Alex's ideas just coming to the page and being iterated on, but getting opinions on how it would sit, especially how producible it was, because we were running within tight constraints, was also valuable. So we were writing the line between how much stuff we could put in it versus how deep the story can go, and I think we found the happiest medium.
Yeah, you did. I mean, I could go on about this film all day long. And were there any particular, well, you said you had a camera issue, but were there any particular challenges leading up to the production?
I think it's easier to count how many things went simply than how many challenges there were, because there were endless challenges. Even leading up to the final hours of production starting, I think Alex and I felt it most, because what it really felt like is that the world was on our shoulders, and in pre-production, and Alex was a key component, and not only the creative, but she was helping in the producing because it's her thesis, and she needed to be involved, and we both were taking on. She was taking on the creative. We were both taking on logistics, and we had many people around us, but at times it felt like we were in this hallway together. And then I think I felt best the morning of the first day of shooting, which was at the ranch that we did all of our exterior shots on, and it was upwards of 25 people who knew exactly what they needed to do and were doing it.
Oh, you,
uh,
now go ahead.
and yeah, and that was absolutely it was bliss, coming from a time where all of us where Alex and I were uh, nervous.
So the ranch, is that where the shipping container setting was?
Yes, yeah,
So
yeah,
this was shot in LA, right?
yeah, Santa Clarita.
Well, the setting was fantastic because it comes across as very, very believable. I actually, before checking the details of the film, I actually thought you shot this in either Syria or Turkey.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's the hope. Yeah, no, we. the good thing with Alex and I is we're a stickler for a good deal. So we made sure to find upwards of 10 location options. We toured many of them, and we got a good deal on our filming for the amount of days that we were there, and it stayed within budget and it was believable. Two birds with one stone.
Wow. So Alex, how did you come to cast this film? Because I thought Amal and Fouad were perfectly cast. I love the homeless guy. The father was great. Even the clerk in the convenience store. So I thought the casting was perfect.
Yeah, thank you so much. I think that casting was like one of the hardest like elements of this. But we reached out actually to the Karam Foundation, which is a foundation that helps Syrian refugees in Turkey and as well as like anywhere that they could help. And recently they've been working inside of Syria. And they're in contact with a network of actors. So we reached out to them. Unfortunately, because of the requirement that was we needed, these 10-year-old children who also speak Arabic fluently was just really hard to come by. Because I was hoping to cast refugees. But what ended up happening is, when that resource did not work out, but, they supported us in many other ways and they're fantastic. And I look forward to collaborating more with them in the future. But I ended up actually going to a Syrian church that had a Sunday school. And I asked the people organizing there, I asked them like, hey, like I'm making this film about like Syrian refugees and I would love to if it's appropriate and if the parents are okay with it to pitch this and see if any of them would be interested. And then I pitched it. They let me go into the Sunday school and I pitched it. And there was one girl who had her hand up so high. She was like, me, please, me. And that was Amal. That was Lamita Saloom who we ended up casting for Amal. And I remember at the time I sat with like 10 children waiting in line, so eager to like audition for this thing. And I would ask them questions. And, a lot of them were fantastic, but the language was the issue. And then she came along, she was so excited. And then her language was like nearly perfect. Her first language is actually not Arabic. I had to coach her with a lot of the pronunciation and cadence and whatnot, but it sounds almost perfect. And then just auditioning her, and she's never done acting before. I gave her like very simple like improv directions to just see how she would like riff off of like my directions. And she just like was able to adjust so quickly. I was like, okay, this is the person I need. And with George, he was like, he's the son of one of my mom's friends, so that was a little easier to find. Laith actually, thanks to Adrian. Adrian connected us. He reached out to him, and then I talked to Laith. And that was that. He really loved the story and did it. And the rest was just regular casting, like as far as like the clerk and the role of the homeless man. I just held auditions at UCLA, and Mo, who did the role of the homeless man, was fantastic. Same with Gamza. They were just fantastic. But it was like
Yeah,
a traditional casting thing for them.
I love it when it's first time actors, and most of the time it's going to be children, no matter what.
Mm.
But
Yeah.
she was perfect for that role. And for being, I'm sure now she has the acting bug, doesn't she?
Yeah. She acted in actually a project recently. I'm blanking out the name, but she did work on a project recently.
Wow. In the, with this film, and I'm not going to give away the ending, but the ending was so good. But,
Thank you.
Amal got what she wanted, but she also lost what she had.
Yeah.
And, um, and so, and I got to thinking about the ending, because she's going to remember that ball forever, but she's going to remember Foad as well.
Yeah.
So I found it
And
moving, but I loved the way that you ended this film. It was perfect. Now, has this film uh, been seen by an audience yet?
oh yeah, we've been. I mean, we screened at UCLA when at the thesis showcase. That was our first screening, but we've been to multiple festivals so far, and we still have some up until the end of 2026.
Oh, fantastic. So,
Yeah.
what's been the audience's reaction to it so far?
I mean, it's been. I feel like one of the most rewarding thing is you screen this at UCLA and you convince yourself that, they're my professors, they're just being nice to me because they're my friends, and you tell yourself a lot of these things that, unfortunately any artist kind of feels like they have this imposter syndrome. And then you go to festivals and then you get actual reactions of people who don't have a personal relationship with you and not they don't feel the need to to tell you, oh, no, 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 this is great, they actually, people come up to you and actually tell you and like bring out details of the film, and it's just so rewarding to hear how people react to it, how people like understand certain storylines. And then recently actually we screened in Dances with Films in New York, and someone came up to me, and she was a Ukrainian refugee, and she told me about like she was like, oh, like thank you for making this film. I felt like even though I'm like Ukrainian, I'm not Syrian, I felt represented. And I feel like that is just genuine. Like I almost cry when she says that. Like this is I feel like it's always when you approach sensitive subjects, you're always worried. You want to represent it well, you want to tell the story authentically, and to hear that from an actual refugee was just so rewarding. So it's been the whole process, the whole journey has been like very, very rewarding.
So, for both of you, when this film debuted at a film festival, what was your emotions sitting in the audience for the first time?
Yeah, here I'll go first really quickly,
Yeah,
but
go ahead.
it was bliss. It was so good to know that it's not over because we're still going through the film festival circuit, but it we premiered and we premiered at LA Shorts about 8 months ago. And it was just a time where we invited all of our cast, all of our crew, and we had our families there. And we genuinely just had an audience who was both supportive, but also full of people who had no idea what our film was after years of hearing about it, hearing about the pains, the wins, and by the time they watched it, I mean, my mother was a cup of tears at the end of it, and it just felt good knowing that people could actually see the effort that we put in.
Awesome. And what about you, Alex, for the first time at a festival?
I feel like I like Adrian put it so like succinctly. I feel like it's the same thing of people hearing about my project for like 2 years. I think we shot in November of 2023 and we premiered in correct me if I'm wrong, Adrian, July of 2025.
Um,
So it was like a good gap because like we had some troubles with post production, so it took us a little longer to get into the flow of festivals. But by that time, people knew that I was preparing for this film. I've been doing it, and it's been like a year and a half almost, and we finally premiered, and people, you know, watching it are like, you hear their reactions, and you feel that they know, and they like kind of what Adrian said of they this is the first time they see what you've been working on, where your passions pour into, and you feel like you gain like this is the same way I feel also about the crew, is like we've built lifelong relationships with these people because everyone was so passionate. We also had a really large crew of volunteers who just were passionate about the story and wanted to volunteer their time to be on this crew. And it's we have like our own little family in a way because of this film. So it was the most rewarding is finally showing it to the cast and crew who were like eager to see it, but also of course the reaction of the audience who knew nothing about this, our families who've been waiting to see this like project that you've been like blowing their ears off about. So it's yeah, it's just it was really nice.
Well, it is a top-notch short film, and I can't wait to see where this is going to go for 2026. And in your film is a lesson that the most important things in our life, they're right there in front of us, and it's family and friends. And I love that whole element about this film. So audiences have already seen it, but what do you hope that audience will take away from seeing it this year?
I think the world is in such a strange period of time at the moment, and I feel like you know Bukra speaks about the experiences of Syrian refugees, but it also has very universal themes that some of us have experienced, some of us know nothing about. And I feel like, which is unfortunate, I feel like the entire world now sees and connects to these stories, and some of the hardships that Amal has went through are things that are kind of seeping through throughout the entire world. So it's you know Bukra has the biggest theme in Bukra is that loss of hope. Um, and unfortunately, like recently, I've been kind of falling back into that place because of seeing like the state of the world right now. But it's also a reminder that we can always persevere, we can always push forward, and any hardship must come to an end. We have to fight back. So that's kind of how I would relate it to what's
No,
happening.
I completely agree. How about you, Adrian?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I could have said it better than Alex. I The fortunate position that we have with this film is that it was written around children, and it was written about a simple yet very complex subject of what it looks like to live through a child's eyes. And while it might seem simple, of Amal trying to accomplish this challenge of getting the soccer ball, it's these little challenges of that would be for you and me, her overcoming with so much effort and such great success when she finally does, that resonates, and it's the world in which she does it, that is a Syrian refugee camp, that is the most important, because even though you are set, 1,000 paces behind the starting line, you can still get there and be as optimistic as everybody else in this life.
Yeah, like I said, I've seen this film way more than once, and and because I've been judging film so much lately,
Yeah.
it was a breath of fresh air to see a film this good. And and ladies and gentlemen, if you're watching, you're listening, you haven't made your first film yet, Bukra is a film you want to watch because you're going to be able to learn something, and you're going to learn a lot just by watching it. The storytelling, the pacing was absolutely fantastic. The structure was spot on, and I love the fact that even in the beginning, you had the title Bukra already on screen. I love the way that it was slightly set behind the mountain range. I love that. Just that opening shot is so professional that I've seen so many films lately to where, from some weird reason, they want to bring the title of the film in 2 minutes in. And I'm like,
Uh-huh.
why? You mess up the pacing. We don't need intros for short films. Tell the story. You told the story, and everything, even when I looked at the movie poster, everything is done professionally. And that's what, when people see this film, that's what they're going to think. This is a professionally done, well done film. And again, I cannot wait to see where this film goes. But ladies and gentlemen, if you are at a film festival this year and Bukra is part of the block, you better make sure you're sitting in the audience to see this film. Now, Bukra is about a young Syrian refugee named Amal who wins a soccer ball and in a sweepstakes, but must race to claim her prize and play one final game with her best friend before he's gone forever. Now, it's set in a Syrian refugee camp in Turkey, and Bukra tells the story of an 11-year-old. And it's her greatest dream to play soccer with a real ball rather than one she and her best friend Fouad crafted from scraps of cloth and twine. Now, when she spots a message under her cola bottle cap promising a chance to win an official World Cup soccer ball, what once felt impossible suddenly seems within reach. She's driven by hope, and she sets out on a journey to the city to claim her prize, unintentionally creating a distance that strains her friendship with Fouad and deepens her longing for a closer connection with her father. This film is full of life lessons, and it shows that sometimes when we have our eye on the ball, we miss the most important elements and or relationships around us. Everything about this film was done right. The storytelling is perfect. The casting was spot on, and the intertwining of the multiple storylines are easy to follow by the audience. The cinematography, again, top notch, and I expect this film to win some awards during its film festival run this year. So again, if you're visiting, attending a film festival, and Bukra is in the block, this is the film you gotta see. So I want to thank you, Alex and Adrian, for sharing this wonderfully incredible short film with me today.
Thank you
Thank you.
so
Thank you
much,
so much for
Ford.
having us.
You're very, very welcome. And again, ladies and gentlemen, Bukra, I really put this film in my top 10 list so far for 2026. Everything was done right. It's enjoyable to watch. You want to watch it again. There's so much to see. And for all of you up and coming filmmakers, there's so much to learn from this film. And to think that it's a thesis film, well, we may just have to start calling her Dr. Alex Ajouni. So we'll see. So, ladies and gentlemen, you can watch or listen to all of the Bondon Cinema interviews at bondoncinema.com. Check out our Prime show, our YouTube channel. We're also on Spotify, iTunes, and more. And remember, you're either going to see me at the movies or from the red carpet.
نحن طالعين من مخيم البحر. كل عملنا نحن نلعب بطابة مثل البشر.
أنا عم بشتغل حتى طلعك من هالمخيم.
خلص شو بدك أنت؟ رح لاقي طريقة أجيبها وارجع بكرة. قوم نلعب هلا. أمان. فؤاد ربحنا بطابة كأس العالم. ربحنا بطابة. ربحنا بطابة.